Different levels of truth exist at different levels of consciousness. They say for every increment of consciousness expanded, so increases the amount of suffering or sorrow. And that's because different levels of truth exist at different levels of consciousness, right? So if you think of consciousness of what you're aware of when you're a kid, right, and it starts here, then as you get older, it expands. 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 There's a certain point where your consciousness, I would say, doesn't necessarily expand. I'd say that you're a fully conscious person, but you just take in more information. Um, so it depends. It really depends. But the point is, as it's expanding, right? There's different points. What you would consider truth here, you might not consider truth here. The only reason why you would consider it truth here is because you don't have the information that solves that gap that you would get here. And then same thing is that what you consider to be true here is not necessarily what you would consider to be true at this level of consciousness, because you're missing information on filling gaps of what your limited scope of awareness was at this level. And so expanding your awareness, expanding consciousness is so big because it expands your perception of truth. It expands your perception of what is objective. It expands your perspective on I would just say on reality in general. So having those experiences oh, having those experiences and expanding and putting yourselves in different positions and places and circumstances and peoples and environments and everything along that line where you're expanding, it deepens your overall philosophy, it deepens your overall narrative, it deepens your overall scope of what you understand to be true, because you can see it for anecdotally and from a first person POV lens that you have experienced. So you can compare, you can weigh in and say, well, I know that's not true because I've experienced it for myself. You know what I mean? I've experienced this thing for myself. I can take someone else's word for it. I can take your word for it. I can take someone else's word for it. But until you experience something for yourself, you cannot verify the validity in the weight of that, and the truth of that statement, or the truth of that whatever it is that you're questioning. So that's why I say there's different levels of truth at different levels of consciousness. And so when you're young, when you're in your adults, when you're a teen, when you're a young adult, as you get older, right, you gain different perspectives, and you see, oh, like, I understand why this made so much, it didn't make sense to me at the time, but now with more experience, wiser, a little bit older, I see certain perspectives. But the same goes vice versa. Some people think they have this, but their experiences are just this, right? Their experience of life is just this, and your experience of life is just this. And it just depends. It's a whole thing. But anyways, I might talk about that a little bit more later. So I'm just going to leave it there for now.